Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about the Siege Rework beta that Creative Assembly has announced for Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires earlier today. Now this is probably just going to be the first round of testing, and there's going to be multiple rounds of testing until they actually release a full Siege Rework, probably with the next DLC I would imagine. I think that's when they are going to release everything. But anyway, from the 24th of July until the 7th of August, we will be testing Siege changes as part of this rework. So what are they adding? And we get to see, we get a message from the battle team lead at CA Sofia. The first thing they mention is the removal of pocket ladders. Now, I've talked about this before in multiple videos. I don't think pocket ladders matter. I think they're a symptom of an issue, or various issues. AI decisions, pathfinding, settlement layout, sieges in general. I personally have played a lot of sieges in Warhammer 3, and I almost never use pocket ladders. The reason I don't use them is because ending units on the wall is a good way of getting them killed or having them take a lot of damage for no real gain. That's one of the issues with regards to sieges. So what I would really like is better pathfinding AI decision and more better siege equipment options and how you use that siege equipment, how you gain that. Anyway, so first off, they mentioned that they removed this because they want to aim for realism. I think the term I would have aimed for here is authenticity, obviously, and they talk about immersion breaking. So it's really more of a perception of an issue than an actual issue, but it's obviously going to have an impact. More so, I would say, on the AI. Again, if you're attacking a element, the vast majority of times, like 99.9%, you should not use pocket ladders. Unless you've got such an overwhelming advantage, you don't care. But that's not a real battle, that's just a grind. When we're talking about real siege battle where you might lose, you should not use either siege towers or pocket ladders or ladders in general. And this, by the way, applies to virtually every Total War game if you have a choice in the matter. Anyway, so they decided to remove that because of immersion reasons. I've stated where I stand on that. But then siege equipment rebalance. The removal of pocket ladder requires a ton of other changes to make sure the game functions without them. So siege equipment availability has been a balance, and players will now be able to field more siege towers and battering rams in siege battles to compensate for the lack of ladders. Stats like speed, durability of that equipment has also been changed to make them more effective in their intended functions. So players will now need less manpower to construct siege equipment, and that means they'll be more readily available. On top of that, settlements are going to be less susceptible to siege attrition in the early stages, but the overall siege will take fewer turns to fully succumb to it. This, again, is probably going to help the AI more than the player. If you're playing a campaign as a human, you don't want to spend a lot of turns besieging a settlement. I'm talking here with 4,000 hours experience. When you're attacking settlements, you want to pretty much take them the turn you attack them. There's a whole discussion on that dynamic, but if you can't, you probably shouldn't, because it is just a good way of getting AI reinforcements or the AI selling out and losing an army. So that's the dynamic we have as players. I think it's good to have the siege attrition change. It's going to be good from the perspective of the AI, again, because the AI does have this behavior of like they're just going to besiege a settlement for a lot of turns. I've seen AI besiege settlements until the very end of that attrition. So having it last less, but having the initial impact less significant is actually going to help the AI. It's also going to help you when, someone shows up at the end turn, just starts besieging settlement and your garrison takes a bit of damage. I imagine that damage is going to be reduced or nullified for like 1-2 turns, but instead it's going to be more severe in the longer term. Okay, all well and good on that. Defensive adjustments. They've adjusted the stats of defense towers and gates. So the towers, we're talking about the wall towers, will now be slightly deadlier. And they're pretty damn deadly already, I gotta mention this. So I wonder how they will handle this. But they will have a much shorter range, while gates will be more durable when it comes to attacks from regular and some monstrous infantry, but less so against battering rams. Well, I think when you look at the power level in Warhammer lore, certain heroes and lords should just annihilate gates. Hell, some of them should just annihilate walls. Seriously, I'm not joking on that. There is that level of power. And the idea that a battering ram would be more effective than, I don't know, Kolic or Grimgor attacking a gate. I don't know. That if we're talking about immersion, that's my view on it. Though, to be fair, battering rams, they're slow, they're not effective as a lot of units, so there's I understand that, but, the problem with siege equipment is it takes turns to use it takes time to get to the wall, and so you really need to have, so for it to be worth it, you gotta create the dynamic where it's actually fun to use to begin with, and two, you gotta create the dynamic where it's worth using. Like, as long as, and you should have units that can attack gates, because, again, Warhammer lore makes perfect sense. Like, let me tell you this, Archaon in the end times was not using any freaking siege ram. He had a Bloodthirster in Averheim. That should give you an idea of the kind of things we're talking about over there. But towers currently feel quite annoying for an attacker when they start shooting immediately after deploying, leaving no room for maneuvers or executing strategic plans. So, less situations and battles where you're just going to where you're going to start a battle or position your army to not take any damage in that little corner on certain maps. Certain maps are worse than others. High elf maps are pretty bad in this respect because you start deployment, you get shot out by half a dozen towers the moment you start deployment. You can reduce that, but it's kind of annoying in terms of deployment. So I'm glad that they've changed that with regards to range. So yeah, more maneuverability, less corner deployment or, bullshit deployment in certain corners of the map to avoid getting shot by towers. And that means you can just destroy the towers with your artillery without having to do what we currently do, which is use your heroes and lords to soak some of the tower damage while using the artillery to destroy it. Then battle AI improvements. I think this is really what's important. Everything like the removal of pocket ladders, the attrition changes and all that. I mean, some of them are good, sure. Attrition changes, tower changes, etc. Rams and pocket ladders, I don't think really will matter as much. But battle AI, however, will. So, I'm really curious to see, with regards to battle AI changes, how they will handle from a defensive siege. According to Creative Assembly themselves, in a previous blog, the vast majority of siege battles in a campaign are offensive sieges, so players attacking settlements. And that's one of the things that's important to get right, because right now things are not fun to deal with whatsoever. The AI is bad, the pathfinding is bad, the tower defense minigame is not great, all kinds of discussion. So improving battle AI does help make things better, because right now you just have the AI sending a portion of an army to hold the walls, then the rest of them are running around, and it allows you to annihilate significant portions of the enemy army while taking very few casualties in return as the attacker. And that's ridiculous. Whatever perspective I have on sieges, I do agree with the sentiment that a lot of people have that sieges are ridiculously stupid right now, because they're actually a huge benefit to, like, if you're as a player attacking a settlement, let's say you have a really powerful enemy AI army, right? Like Grimgor, let's go with that, right? Grimgor, Archaon, etc. If you fight them on a field battle, that might be difficult. If you fight them in siege, that is a guaranteed win, provided you don't run out of ammunition, if you're even using ammunition. But even if you're using full melee armies, it is a lot easier to win that battle. That's not quite how it should work in a siege situation. And of course, you can abuse the AI if you are the defender in that situation to win unwinnable battles, but that's a different discussion. Siege map improvements, very important as well. A lot of the maps are not especially great, but they're only releasing 3 maps right now, one for Skaven, Empire, and Orcs. But there will be more to come in the future after getting feedback. So they're just releasing 3 maps. I'm curious to see what those maps will. I'm guessing they've chosen these 3 races because Empire, Orcs, and Skaven do have very different layouts in their maps, though those layouts do share similarity with other ones. Like, funnily enough, the Orc settlement layout shares similarities with the High Elves. I'm not joking on that. The Skaven one, you can think about the Dwarves. The Empire is kind of unique in that respect. I guess, you can think about Tomb Kings from that perspective. But yeah, different layouts, so I guess they're looking to see how all those different maps will handle it. Well, I guess Empire is similar to Lizardman settlements in some way, not quite in that respect. Yeah, siege maps can often feel a little too cramped, a little space to maneuver. Yes, and your buildable barricades are not helping on that CA, Can we remove those, please? That would be great. That would be freaking amazing. And then what's cooking? Everything we have listed here are just the first steps to get sieges where we want them to be, and we're looking at this as a long-lasting effort to improve the game. In the future, we have a wish list of possible options to explore, such as introducing ladders as a new constructible siege equipment, rebalancing the way garrisons work. Ooh, that would be something, isn't it? And what units are available for them for all factions, changing the way building towers and barricades work, as well as more battle, AI, and pathfinding upgrades. And the final point, and I would say the most important point in all of this, I would say, is not anything they've announced so far, it's this one. We're already hard at work at polishing out the auto-resolver and making it function properly. Thank you. Because this is the one thing that I believe a lot of content creators and a lot of people on Reddit don't talk about. Almost at all. You play a campaign, like there's people who do have to talk about this, including myself, but other people. When you play a campaign, Archeon, you meet Archeon in the field of battle, that should be a brutal battle. You shouldn't just be able to click a button easily and just win that, right? At least on higher difficulties, or if you've chosen that. We can talk about how auto-resolve should have a slider in the settings, all that. That's a different discussion. But here's what happens right now. You might meet Archeon in the field battle, and you might be able to auto-resolve that with fewer casualties than a Tier 1 minor settlement garrison. That is ridiculously stupid. That's not how it should function. You meet Grimgor on a field battle, and let me say this as much. You meet people like Archeon, you meet people like Malice, you meet people like Grimgor in a field battle. Those are scary bastards to deal with, especially Grimgor, for a reason, right? But you cannot resolve that easier than you might resolve a shit tier settlement with minimal garrison, especially if we're thinking about races like dwarves who have heavy armor. So yes, auto-resolve is a big deal. The way the damage is calculated based on armor is not great. The fact demons suffer significantly auto-resolve, whereas in actual manual battles, and it's, again, an armor factor. So there's a lot of things they need to do with auto-resolve. But what I'm really excited about is not anything they've announced here. Like, there are some things I like an attrition situation battle, and we'll see how that plays out. But I think really important is what's here. Changing the way barricades and towers work, changing the way garrisons work, new constructible siege equipment. Undermining would be a great thing. Changing the way you construct siege equipment would be a great change. Like, give me the ability of just building stuff instantly. I'll pay a K gold to undermine a section of the wall. Don't make it too ridiculous, but give me something I can do so I can actually open up the battlefield more and make battles more interesting, more fun. Also, we could talk about how walls break down when you destroy them. That would be a pretty big deal, because right now it's not great. We could talk about line of sight issues, units shooting through those wall gaps or a destroyed gate and all that kind of stuff. We could talk about the AI sitting on its ass behind the walls and never selling out to annihilate an opponent, which they could. Really, you have no risk when you're attacking at the moment. And let me say also this about historical sieges. Sieges in history. Very few times during a real siege did the defending force ever just sit there and allow itself to be bombarded. If they could do about it, you see about sallying out, ambushes, raids, getting supplies in and out. And yes, a lot of real sieges were decided on the walls, not inside of the settlement. That's fair enough. But the reason they were decided on the walls, it's not just because walls themselves provided such an impregnable defense. It's because someone destroying the walls meant that everything the defender had tried to harass, to sally out, to delay an opponent, all that had failed. That's what's kind of important. Sieges were not like these static affairs. They were very dynamic. Like, actually, if you look at the real sieges of Helm's Deep and Minas Tirith, the ones in the books, not the movies, the books. Let me say this. They were not fought inside Helm's Deep or inside Minas Tirith. In fact, the orcs destroyed the gate And then Rohan arrived. Like, the moment the gate was destroyed, like, Peter Jackson did a great job. But that perception, Tolkien knew a thing or two about war, and specifically defensive warfare, having, served in World War I, actually understood that trench lines, sallying, harassment, fortifications, outlying fortifications, that's what decided the siege situation. And mind you, in World War I, you might think about just the trench warfare aspect, but I gotta mention about World War I, there were heavily fortified modern fortresses in World War I that were bitterly fought over. Some of the most brutal sieges actually were fought during World War I. Like, yeah. Some of the fortresses that were used in World War I. I mean, our modern artillery, modern at the time, did obviously change that dynamic a lot. But we do have those examples. And guess who served during World War I? Tolkien, who wrote things who may not have changed the story of Lord of the Rings based on that, but he knew a thing or two about real war. Christine, signing out.